So before we sort of wrap up this story, I just wanted to discuss the ending and the possible readings that exist in regards to interpreting the ending. So in some cases, it is a sort of acknowledgement that this character has it's a tragic ending, and this is the result of her being sort of treated with the rest cure, and the ending just confirms our ideas of that she has sort of succumbed to her illness and suffered a complete mental breakdown or nervous breakdown. So we feel sorry for her, and this is a tragic ending. Other critics have sort of looked at more of the sort of figurative or abstract levels and interpreted the ending in a sort of feminist lens. So if we look at Gilman's narrative through a sort of feminist perspective, it's one way of reading the story. We can sort of see an optimistic or sort of triumphant moment in her illness. So her breakdown is also could be regarded as a kind of breakthrough. If we read it in a positive sense, she does sort of accomplish what she set out to do, which is to astonish John. And if we look at him as sort of the antagonist or oppressor in this story, he's the one who sort of falls down, faints at the end, and she sort of crawls over top of him. So in a way, if you look at him as the sort of antagonist or a negative force within the story, she does sort of overcome or in a way subvert the oppression that he represents. So that's one way of reading it, and in this regard you could say that she has become sort of freed herself from the prison of her marriage, and freed herself figuratively from the wallpaper. So the pattern, like her marriage or like her circumstance in life, is constrained, and then in the end she has sort of broken through and freed herself in this moment. So there are sort of two possible endings, one that reads it as a positive, a sort of a moment of liberation. The other views it as just confirming the fact that this is a very ill woman who suffers a complete mental breakdown. So the two endings are possible readings that you can have of this story. Both, I think, are equally valid. One just has to do with doing a twist on a sort of feminist perspective or feminist reading. And I think we can sort of take this story and also look at the autobiographical elements that are present as Gilman wrote this story as a way to cure herself from suffering a nervous breakdown. And if you want to sort of read an essay by Gilman, she wrote an essay called Why I Wrote the Yellow Wallpaper, which is available online. And in that she describes her experience of being a patient of S. Weir Mitchell, and how that sort of drove her to her limits of her nervous disorder. And the more she sort of conformed to his treatments, the worse her condition became. And it was only until she said she cast the specialist's advice to the winds, so she completely threw away his prescriptions and went against her treatment, and then resumed her work again. And it was this work, her work of writing, that really allowed her to heal and become better and overcome her nervous disorder, her depression. And then the quote at the bottom there is from the essay that she wrote. So she says, I cast the noted specialist's advice to the winds and went to work again. Work, the normal life of every human being. Work in which is joy and growth and service, without which one is a pauper and parasite, ultimately recovering some measure of power. So you can again consider the historical context at the time, where women were not allowed or were greatly discouraged from doing work, including writing or pursuing their education, or pretty much any intellectual activity that was reserved for men only. So Gilman was a very strong proponent of women entering into the public sphere and breaking down some of those obstacles, those barriers that existed at the time that said women couldn't be writers or women couldn't pursue higher education. And here's an example of a woman, Gilman herself, who defied her doctor's orders and went on to have a very strong political and creative career as a writer and feminist in the sort of political arena as well. So in a way, she found her own cure. So I guess the story could have that twist on it as well. So I thought we would just wrap up our lectures on short stories by, again, I'll talk briefly about the your writing assignment number 1 and your choice of essay topics. Again, you aren't restricted to these topics. You can sort of devise your own thesis and argument, but I thought I would give you some topics just in case you need some help generating an idea and want to get a sense of the kind of questions I would like you to address. So you will choose one of these topics or one short story to talk about in your essay, and I've given you 4 sort of sample questions to choose from. So you are again picking one. So the first one, what is the cause of Louise Mallard's death in Kate Chopin's The Story of an Hour? Explain the irony surrounding the circumstance of her death. So in that essay, again, you'll tell me the cause of Louise Mallard's death and how it was ironic. Question number 2, explain the significance of setting in Hemingway's Hills Like White Elephants. How does the setting reinforce the central conflict of the couple? So in that one, you will identify key elements of the setting and how they relate or reflect what we talked about in regards to that story, the conflict that is present. And then the third topic, how is John causing his wife's mental breakdown in Charlotte Perkins Gilman's Yellow Wallpaper? Explain your answer using details from the story to support your argument. That's the case in each essay. I want you to use quotations, direct quotations, and as evidence to prove your points. So in this one, I want you to focus specifically on John, the character of John, and how he contributes to his wife's mental breakdown. And then the final question, how does Almer play God in Hawthorne's The Birthmark? Does he triumph in his experiment? So you can discuss that story and give evidence, again, quotations. And I think this topic, or this essay is around 500 words or so that's 2 pages, double-spaced, 12-point font. And if you have any questions, again, join the live chat or send me an email.